Joining me now to discuss this and more is Federal Liberal MP and former Ambassador to Israel, Dave Sharma, and former Chair of the Foreign Affairs and Defence Committee and the former Deputy Chair of the Intelligence Committee, former Labor MP Michael Danby. Welcome to you both.
Good evening,
Thanks,
Sharri. Good evening, Michael.
Now,
Hi, Dave.
Let's start with the topic I've just been discussing, Shaoquett Moselmane. Michael, during your time in Parliament, you came up frequently against the Chinese lobby. You were silenced from giving a parliamentary speech that mentioned a big-time Labor Chinese donor, and it was out of concern, at least you thought it was out of concern that he'd withdraw his donations. How much has the Chinese government infiltrated the Labor Party, do you think?
Well, to some extent in New South Wales they've had a big influence, and you can see the network is not just Shaoquett, but it's Sam Dastyari, who was forced to resign, and the former Secretary Jamie Clement. So it's a network, but they are also trying in all political parties too. I mean, there are allegations against Gladys Liu which are unproved, and they were giving Wang Xinmo, who was the man excluded from Australia by ASIO, who's very closely associated with the Chinese Communist Party, who was the central donor, the man who organised all of this from Beijing's point of view, also gave big donations to the Liberal Party in West Australia. But I don't want to underestimate this for particularly New South Wales Labor. I have to tell you, as a Victorian, I feel a bit aggrieved that, you know, here we have a state where Labor's been in power for many years, is in the black, and there's federal intervention straight away to take away everyone's rights as soon as some bloke says the wrong thing on 60 Minutes. But in New South Wales, there's this pattern of people's wrong behaviour, and there is insufficient action. I think there should be federal intervention against the New South Wales branch. I've got nothing against poor Bob Nanda, who's the latest mug to be stuck with a secretary's job there, but really this has just gone too far, and it doesn't represent the views of the Australian people. We are not to blame for what Beijing is doing. Aggression in the South China Sea, putting Uyghur Muslims, I wish Shaoquett Moselmane had said something about this, in concentration camps.
So Michael, you're effectively saying
they just get away with it.
So you're effectively saying that the Federal Party should sack the New South Wales branch of the Labor Party like they did in Victoria and take control?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Dave,
I think that's exactly what should happen, because this Shaoquett Moselmane incident is just part of a pattern. It's like a spider's web. His mentor, Bob Carr, is at the centre of this, and all of these people who have been exposed by ICAC or, dropped the Labor Party in the soup before the Eden-Monaro by-election are all part of this network which needs to be cleaned out, and we need to be representing decent Labor values. Jodie McKay's an okay person, but she's allowed this Shaoquett Moselmane to walk the plank. I think he should have been expelled like Somyurek, and I think certainly federal Labor needs to look into the New South Wales branch, who's performed disgracefully and pathetically since the days of Morris Yema. Yeah. They're a stone around our neck.
Now, Dave, just being very by the way, I'm glad Jodie McKay's got your okay tick of approval, Michael Danby. But Dave Sharma, Moselmane has been a policy ally of Bob Carr's, as Michael just mentioned. And just being careful here, because a lot of these characters are very litigious. But do you have any concerns, Dave Sharma, about? Yes, exactly. You're facing legal action at the moment from a former Labor MP relating to this topic. But do you have any concerns about Bob Carr's role as Foreign Minister? I mean, you were the ambassador to Israel, so you had a lot of dealings with that office.
No, I don't. I think I would disagree with Bob Carr on a number of issues, as with Michael, particularly, in respect of our relationship with China and our approach towards the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But I think, look, he keeps some unfortunate company, and Shaoquett Moselmane would be one of those. But I don't think we can say he's guilty by association. No.
Yeah, Michael. Just in terms of the Labor Party and the fact that Moselmane was such a big fundraiser for them, do you think this is why New South Wales Labor put up with him for so long?
No. Sharri, you're partially on the right track, but there's another equally important factor. He was the key person in Arabic Friends of Labor. Now, it's perfectly legitimate for members of the Arabic community in Sydney to be involved in the Labor Party, as it is Indian members or Turkish members in Victoria. But he was absolutely key to the branch stacking activities of certain people in New South Wales along with his fundraising. In fact, I would say his support for people who have similar views, as you said, on Israel, but equally and importantly on China, is key to understanding him. It's actually a bit tragic, Sharri, because I think this bloke's, and you can see it from his brother and his earlier comments, hatred of Israel has been used to leverage him into the position of what David Shoebridge from ASPI called being a useful idiot for Beijing.
Yeah, so Michael Shoebridge, I think you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Shoebridge, I'm sorry.
Dave, does this investigation now by ASIO show that the intelligence agency is taking a tougher approach under Mike Burgess than it's done in the past?
Well, I think this is an important investigation. We've had these foreign interference laws in our books now for a couple of years, but we hadn't really had any activity under them, at least not that the public was made aware of. Late last year, you'd be aware that the Prime Minister stood up a foreign interference task force, which was housed within ASIO. And I think this is one of the first major investigations of which we are aware, which is, shining a light on some of this sort of stuff. And I think it's incredibly important that we not only have the laws on the books, but that we enforce them, because we pass the laws for a reason. This stuff is going on. It's not acceptable. It's a real threat to Australian sovereignty, and we need to be putting the full force of law enforcement and our domestic intelligence agencies behind stamping out on it. I think it's an incredibly important role for the government.
Dave, do you expect there's going to be further investigations into politicians or political figures or lobbyists under these new laws?
Look, I would think so. We don't know how far this reaches, but we've seen with Sam Dastyari, with the allegations about bags full of Aldi bags full of cash revealed at the New South Wales ICAC from Chinese property developers, and now this investigation. And I stress it's an investigation. It hasn't been charged with anything, but it's clear that there's our intelligence agencies and other parts of the government are increasingly worried about attempts to, basically buy political influence, for foreign actors to buy political influence in the Australian political system, and that's deeply worrying. And I think we're only just really at the start of the campaign against that. Yeah.
Now,
Sharri, can I just say
yes,
something like, good on Dave and the government for doing something about this. The Australian people expect you to have laws and to act on them. I would say there are a lot of good people in Labor, and those laws were only passed because the government doesn't have a majority in the Senate. They were passed in March last year with my good friend Senator Don Farrell having a lot of role in steering them through, along with the government. So there are a lot of Labor people who support this too, and who do not believe that a hostile totalitarian power like China, who is increasingly aggressive towards us, we should have good relations with them if we can, that there should be a line drawn in the sand, and there should be bipartisan support for this, and that's not happening in New South Wales, and they ought to get a big kick in the bum from the Australian public and from the rest of the Labor Party in Australia.